Hey everybody, Ashley Inc. here from Spooky Scary Storytime, and tonight we're going to be talking about a glitch in the matrix, time travel, tear in the time-space continuum story, whatever you want to call it. I don't make a lot of long-form YouTube content. It's very time-consuming, although I am trying to make more, but I feel like this story deserves a deep dive. So this story was originally submitted to Spooky Scary Storytime by someone named Maria, and I'm going to give you a full breakdown of the story in case you're just now hearing about it. But in case you already heard the story and you're just here for the extra details that I didn't share on other platforms, like the emails we're going to go through from all the other people who said that they have been to this gas station, you can skip to this part in the video. Now, Maria, the person who sent the original story, said that in 2007, she and her 3 siblings and her sister-in-law were driving from Florida to Georgia after attending their favorite uncle's funeral. He unfortunately passed away. The trip was not planned. They all didn't get together that much, and despite the circumstances, they were having a pretty good time in the car. Everybody was laughing and joking. Maria was driving first. They left Florida around 5 p.m., and it was a 10-plus hour drive, according to Maria. So 5 hours in, she really has to pee. They're on 75. They're headed to Georgia, and she had to pee so bad it was like emergency status. So she just said, I'm going to pull off at the next exit that I see. She pulls off, and they notice that there's no signs at the exit. Like, you know how normally there's an exit sign that says gas this way or food this way, whatever. None of that. But she was like, I don't care. There's got to be a gas station. So she turns, is driving down this road for what feels like forever. And there's no signs of life. There's no streetlights. There's no other cars. But again, this is a small town in Georgia. So a lot of people probably weren't out. She said it was a Sunday night. After driving for about 15 minutes down this dark 2-lane highway, there's just trees all around. No other signs of life, no turns, nothing like that. They see lights of a gas station. So they pull up. Maria hops out of the car. She runs in the gas station, doesn't even look around. She runs immediately into the bathroom. She pees, does her business, whatever. She comes out and she notices something is off, but all of her siblings have this kind of look on their face. Like they just look shocked. Nobody's saying anything. But her sister rushes past her, goes into the bathroom. And that's when Maria really sees like her surroundings. So she notices that the gas station just has an eerie vibe. The lighting is strange. There's one fluorescent lamp in the middle of the ceiling, and it's flickering every few seconds. She looks at her brother to say something like, this is creepy, but she notices her brother is just staring at the man standing behind the counter. Maria described him as an older man with deep wrinkles, thin. She said he was about 6 foot tall. And he was staring at them, but it was almost like he was staring through them. He wasn't moving. He wasn't blinking. And she said he was like, she could barely even notice if he was breathing. But again, they were standing kind of far away. So she's just like, okay. She just said she had this feeling of dread. But she's trying to play it off. She decides she's going to walk around, look for some snacks, maybe some drinks while they're all in this gas station. And her sister's taking forever in the bathroom. So as she's walking down these aisles, she notices all the labels of all these snacks are just covered in dust. They look like old dated labels, some vintage. I don't know. She's just never seen some of these images before, despite that the year is 2007. Her sister finally comes out of the bathroom, and they all, I guess, just had the same feeling. As soon as her sister comes out of the bathroom, she grabs her hand and they just bolt out of there. She said, I don't know what it was. I just knew that we needed to get out of there. They all hop in the car. Apparently they all just felt this way. Maria hops back in the driver's seat and she just peels out and she's like, we'll find another gas station. So they're driving down the same road back to the highway. She said they didn't have GPS, but she had made that trip from Florida to Georgia and back and forth just tons of times over the years. So she didn't need GPS. She said she did have a candy bar phone, but no maps or anything like that. So she knows she's headed the right way, but they're driving and they don't hit the interstate. So they keep driving and they come up to another gas station. And as they get closer, they realize it's the same gas station, but it's on the same side of the road. They're just passing it again. So she slows down because she's like, how did we end up back here? But she said she's a logical-minded person. So she's thinking, I must have hit a fork in the road or I must have made a turn and didn't realize it. She's like, there has to be an explanation. So as they're pulling by this gas station, they see the same old man standing behind the counter, but now he's staring at them through the window, still not moving. And her brother's like, just go. So they pull off again. And she said she was going about 100 miles an hour. One thing I forgot to mention earlier is that she said during the time they were at the gas station, when they were running back out to the car, she noticed there were no nature sounds. There was no crickets, there was no frogs, there was nothing really. So they're driving and she's paying extra close attention because she's like, there's a fork in the road, something happened, we got turned around. They're going straight down the road. They don't hit any turns, no forks in the road. And then she realizes they're coming up to another gas station and it's the same one, but this time the lights are off and the gas station's boarded up and there's no man inside. but she knows it was the same gas station because there were tire marks in the drive where they pulled out the previous time. Her brother starts yelling at her, "Go, go, go," and she gets back to the highway within 5 minutes, and they have no idea how that happened. She said the experience shook them. They don't know what to make of it. Apparently, one of her brothers refuses to talk about it. She doesn't talk to her sister anymore, and her other brother is deaf. But she says he will talk about the experience. They just have to use a translator. Now, that story is strange enough in itself, and I thought it was just another glitch in the Matrix story time for Spooky Scary Storytime. But then things got really weird when I received an email from a person who called themselves John Doe. And John Doe's story is what really made this blow up. In essence, John Doe basically emailed me saying, "Hey, it was my dad working at the gas station that night, and he had complained about seeing time travelers from the future." But apparently John Doe's dad had severe pill and alcohol problems all through John Doe's early life, and his mother eventually thought that him talking about seeing time travelers at work was just him relapsing after he had promised to be clean. So she took the kids and she left. And John Doe and his sister didn't talk to him for 16 years. John Doe and his father reconnected after John Doe had his first daughter. John Doe was about 29 at the time, and he said, "Why did you relapse when you did?" And his dad said, "I never did." He said, "I really did see people from the future that night." I think he called them ghosts from the future. As far as why he knew they were from the future, we don't really know. John Doe said he didn't know, but he does remember his dad saying that he saw them pull out in a car from the future. Maria did confirm that she didn't have her cell phone on her when she was in the gas station, so we know it wasn't that. The year that John Doe's dad was at the gas station when he supposedly saw these time travelers was 1984. And I have the full transcripts of the emails from John Doe on my TikTok. I will link those in the description of this video if you haven't heard them. But John Doe has also said that he wants to remain anonymous because he's 54. He works in a field that demands evidence-based thinking. He has a wife who also still works, and he has 3 daughters who are building their own lives. So basically, he just doesn't want to be embarrassed in case his name gets attached to this story, which I completely understand and respect. He also said that he's coming to terms with the fact that he didn't talk to his dad for 16 years because of the fact that his dad claimed to have seen time travelers and he thought he just lost it. So I'm keeping the main storylines between Maria and John Doe on my TikTok page, okay? But this video is really to dive deeper into the 75 plus emails. Obviously, I'm not going to be reading them all, just the ones that seem relevant, because a lot of people have sent me a lot of strange information and their own stories about the area, and I really just need help kind of sifting through them and trying to figure out what's real. And maybe if I don't see it, maybe one of you will see it and be able to piece something together. So right now, the facts of the story is that according to Maria, it was somewhere about 5 hours between Florida and Georgia. John Doe says the gas station that his father worked at was off of I-75 and State Road 376. Also, I realize there's some pauses and hesitation, but that's because this is pretty raw. I'm not reading off a teleprompter. This is all from memory and just sort of stream of consciousness talking. John Doe said that the gas station had 2 pumps and that it was attached to a body shop, or at least had a body shop on property. And the body shop was sometimes non-functional. Maria said that she remembers it being surrounded by a dense forest, and John Doe said that it was possibly called Ben's or Bobby's, or a man's name with a B, in 1984 when his father worked there, but that it changed ownership often and the name changed with it. All of that said, let's get into some of the information that people have been sending me trying to take part in solving this mystery, because that's what it is, right? Like, it's a real life mystery that we're trying to solve in real time, and I think that's so cool. Maria and I have talked about going there and possibly trying to meet up. I'm trying to find probably an older person that was an adult in 1984 who may have known John Doe's father, because John Doe also said that his dad spent a lot of time at this local VFW. This is new information. So we're trying to figure out which VFW this is. It's probably still around, right? I feel like VFWs don't tend to go away. Maybe the same people don't hang out there anymore, but I bet you somebody's still around who was around John Doe's father's age, who's still living in the town and had to have heard him talk about time travel. Like, you know, people go to a bar, they get drunk and they start rambling about crazy stuff. So I think maybe we should start there. Somebody in the comments of one of the TikTok videos suggested finding a local Facebook group from Valdosta or the surrounding area, because a lot of older people are on Facebook and are part of their community groups. So I think that could be a good resource. So if there's anybody out there watching that thinks that they have like a parent or a grandparent that could be in one of these Facebook groups, maybe ask them if they would be willing to make a post about this. And another thing we could do is, I haven't looked yet, but I want to look into state or county records about a gas station that was named Bobby's or Ben's or something in the 80s. And then maybe we can track down the owner or family members or somebody who remembers this place existing. And then we can get an exact location. But I digress. Let's get into the emails. So of these emails that I've received, I've gotten so many, but these are the emails that I think information might be relevant. And I'm just going to read you them in full as they were sent because I don't want to summarize and potentially miss something. So this first person just wanted to be anonymous. So I'm just going to refer to her by her first initial, which is M. So M says, subject, Georgia gas station. I think this gas station is the same one we went to in 1996. My mom, brother, and me were going to Savannah, Georgia for the first time. Mom and I had to pee, and brother wanted a snack, so we pull off at an exit where it says gas is 2 miles away. When I tell you, we drove forever. Mom kept looking at the odometer because she said it was way more than 2 miles. We drove for what felt like at least an hour before we found it. When we pulled up, there were 2 of the old school pumps that don't have sensors, but I jumped out of the car and ran to the bathroom. Mom spilled some gas and was angry. She was always kind of angry, so that's not new. She pulls some clothes out of her suitcase and goes in the bathroom when I come out, and she goes in to rinse her clothes and change. Brother and I are looking for snacks, but they don't really have anything, just old canned goods and like grocery stuff. No drinks really either, at least nothing in plastic. They had Cokes, but we really didn't like or drink Coke. We were more Kool-Aid and juice kids, and all we had were big glass jugs of apple juice. I think she meant all they had were big glass jugs of apple juice. Mom comes out to pay for the gas and sees tea berry gum at the counter. It is her Roman Empire and her most favorite gum and flavor on earth, but she said she hadn't seen it since the 60s. So she tells the man she wants to buy the whole case, 20 packs at about 25 cents per pack, so $5. She didn't check the gas price because she spilled gas all over herself, so she tells him she has more cash in her car if it's not enough and hands him a 10 and a 5. At that time, gas was about 80 cents on average, and the car had a 13-gallon tank, so she should get a few cents back. The man looks at the money and says he won't take it because it's counterfeit. Mom argues that it's not, and they go back and forth for a minute, and she finally tells him to call the police if he doesn't believe it. The man goes over to a phone, but it was a weird phone. It was a box with a piece that you pull down and hold to your ear. He talked to someone and asked to be put through to the police department. At this point, I can tell my mom is starting to get sketched out, but I can't tell why. She throws a $20 down on the counter, takes the gum, and grabs me, pulling me and my brother out. Brother asks if there's going to be a car show because he had seen a bunch of old-timey cars go by, including a Fairlane and 2 Packards, both in mint and pristine condition. Mom says she doesn't know and orders us both back to the car. It took about 5 minutes to get back to the highway, and I tell Mom she should have gone the way that we came the first time so it didn't take so long because I almost peed on myself. She argued with me and told me that it was the way she had gone, and she didn't know why it took so long. Flash forward to COVID. My grandma died, and she was a hoarder, so we were cleaning out her stuff. Mom found 2 packs of the gum she'd given Grandma in the logos in the 80s, but these were vintage 60s packs. I asked her about the gas station and why she got so weird and ordered us to go to the car. She said she couldn't remember what did it, but something in the store just gave her goose pimples and made her feel like if we didn't get out, we weren't going to get out. She also said she thought the man was crazy because in the 90s, this was in 1996 or 7, there were no switchboard phone operators still going on, but she could hear a woman on the other end of the phone when the man tried to call the police. She said she also noticed the newspaper was in black and white, which was odd because even our small town paper had color print on the front page. We are neurospicy people, and my mom is a numbers person. Not just math and money, she notices and remembers numbers for decades. She said it was 24 miles to the gas station, but only 5 from it, and that it took almost 2 hours to get off the interstate, get gas and pee, and then get back. She was really mad because it's a very long drive, and she wanted to do it in a day, but we ended up pulling out outside Atlanta once we passed it and kind of getting a room for the night because we lost time at the gas station. She said she was worried the man was trying to abduct us and that the woman on the switchboard was some kind of interior line he had set up with whoever he was working with. I don't know if this is the same place, but it was a weird experience I had forgotten about until I saw these stories. I should add the disclaimer, I have a bunch of very weird stories. I lived in a place in Kentucky that I maintain after living in 27 different states is the weirdest place in the country. But the gas station was definitely weird. Please don't use my real name. And that's that one. And we're just going to rapid fire through these. So moving right on to the next one. The next one that seems like it might be relevant, at least about this area, if not the gas station, was from someone who also wanted to be anonymous. We're just going to call her A. She said, hey, I say keep me anonymous on this one just in case, but I think I have something to add. I've lived in Atlanta my entire life and used to date a guy who lived in North Florida. The drive down was about 6 hours and went straight down I-75 through Valdosta. There's a good stretch in there with just about nothing in South Georgia, and I had to get to a bathroom just like the other people. I wasn't really looking for signs or anything on my navigation and just picked an exit out of desperation. I don't remember the gas station being particularly old, but I do remember the single pumps outside with no canopy over them. Inside was dingy with a single bathroom toward the back of the building. It was like nothing was moving, nothing was breathing, and if I did, something bad would happen. I stuck it out to pee and rushed back to my car. I put my home address back on my phone as it had disappeared when I was inside, but instead of turning back towards 75, it took me in the opposite direction. I trust Waze, so I thought there might have been a crash while I was busy, even if it was that late at night. So I follow this back road, and I have a weird sense that my clocks aren't working right. It feels almost like they're going slower than time should move. Waze turns me down another road before directing me onto someone's endless-looking gravel driveway. It should have been impossible for it to tell me to turn down the road since there was no road on the map, just empty space. At this point, I get the sense to get out and whip it back the way I came. Within minutes, I'm back on the interstate. I called my then boyfriend immediately and told him, asking about cryptids in the area, but he couldn't think of any explanation. Hearing these stories on her page filled me with the kind of dread that makes your eyes water. I'm not sure if we were at the same station, but whatever going on down there is no joke. Next person also wants to be anonymous. I think I've been to this gas station. The story stumbled on my For You page. I came in at the first John Doe email and something told me I had to go find the original story to get caught up. And I got goosebumps on my stomach sank. I watched all the other parts of this story and truly believe we got caught in whatever it is that's happening. I live in Atlanta, but my husband, son, and I go to Florida every year as we have some friends and family connections down there. One year we got a late start to the road and traffic was horrific because it was the beginning weekend of spring break. So pretty much all of Atlanta was on the road, most of which was also making their way to Florida. So it was a nightmare and we were on the road super late at night, well past what we had planned and scheduled for. Because of this, we had already run through our road trip snacks, and like the others have said, we all had to pee, stretch our legs, and get some drinks. My husband was also getting some anxiety, panic, and road rage from all the traffic, and he desperately needed a breather. So he pulled off at the closest exit, last-minute decision, unplanned. We didn't even pay attention if the sign said there was food and gas. He just knew we all needed a break and was certain we could find one somewhere. Just like in the original story, we drove on this 2-lane highway from the exit ramp that seemed to go on forever. No lights, no street lamps, no traffic lights, nothing. Just a few of the big orange roadwork barrels, but that's it. And no one was on the road with us, which may have not been unusual for a rural road in the presumed middle of nowhere, but it was eerie considering how heavy traffic was this entire trip. We all started getting nervous, thinking maybe we had turned off onto a road with construction, considering the barrels and now how dead and empty everything was, and we just missed the signs in our eagerness to stop. There was nothing that was inherently wrong per se, but there was an oversensitive feeling of we're not supposed to be here, to the point that even my husband was getting a little on edge. It felt like everyone else had gotten the memo not to turn there but us. So finally he said F it and turned back around to get us back on the highway. We'll get off at the next exit. Only the highway never came. We drove back twice the distance, but the ramp never came. He turned around again, thinking we must have missed it due to being so dark. Now going back the original direction, we drove past once again where the on-ramp should have been, but there was nothing. My husband started getting angry at this point. He thought his map was acting up and getting us lost, but we hadn't turned or anything. All we did was exit, and then we go straight, turn around, go straight, etc. But this time, we don't see any construction barrels, whereas before we drove a good 15 or 20 minutes, only about 5 minutes down the road, we saw lights for a gas station. My husband immediately went for it to pull in because even though it seemed impossible, as we had only gone in a straight line, he was sure we were lost and his GPS was acting up. Plus, we also needed to pee. Our son was starting to get upset and we needed to get some food and drinks, and it just didn't seem like a red flag when you simply think you're lost. He told us to go in and he'd try to sort out the GPS. The place was creepy, but no creepier than any other middle of nowhere gas station. I've been in tons of them and they're all a bit creepy, especially at night, so I didn't think much of it beyond at that time. But it was indeed red themed and had 2 gas pumps outside. It wasn't until we went to pay for our stuff did I get a sickening feeling like we needed to get out. The cashier was off. I can't explain it any other way. It was just a vibe and they seemed to look through us, not at us. The response when cashing us out sounded robotic and unnatural, and the light that hadn't had any problems up until that point started flickering and would not stop. It freaked us out. I told myself that they were probably just high or sleep deprived from the night shift, but I knew I didn't want to be there anymore and the overall creep factor was growing. As we got back to the car, freaked out, my husband was still fighting with the GPS. The signal had completely dropped out. He was also getting the heebie-jeebies. He didn't go inside with us, but the ambiance was just getting thicker and we could all feel it. He decided that if we got back on the road, we had a better chance of finding a GPS signal, so we got out of Dodge, driving back the way we came. Only made a wrong turn on. I think that might have been a typo. It was nothing but a straight road. He was starting to get panicked even more so when we finally saw the lights in the distance and thought that finally we had found the highway. But as we got closer, it was the same gas station, the same exact one we had just pulled out of. We hadn't even turned around this time, but there it was. A slew of curse words came out of his mouth, and he pulled a very illegal U-turn to get the fuck away from that place. Our son was freaking out. I was on the verge of tears, but he kept yelling that this doesn't make effing sense when we caught sight of some construction barrels, and then all of a sudden the GPS was back. Less than 5 minutes down the road, we could hear the traffic from the highway. Everything was suddenly normal again. This whole ordeal took nearly an hour, only to be 5 minutes down the road from the highway, and then she sent some question marks. My husband always said it was just due to us being exhausted and stressed on the road, just a bad phone signal. He changed his phone carrier after this incident, but it has never ever sat right with me. Something about it was wrong, and when I heard the other story, I felt sick. It was the only time we have ever been in this place or seen this place in all the many years we've driven down. I do not remember what exit it was, but I do know it was as we were passing or near Valdosta. And even though my husband likes to rationalize it, he won't stop in Valdosta ever since. And truthfully, I am thankful for that. I really can't put into words the feeling you get from this place, but I don't want to ever stumble upon it again. It gives the impression that we wouldn't make it back a second time. My dad lived in Valdosta when he was in the Air Force, and he has some spooky stories from that town. I never really took him seriously, but after that, yeah, we just skipped Valdosta entirely, not tempting anything out there. There's a theme here, which is this feeling of dread, right? I noticed that in all these stories. Okay, the next one comes from someone named Kay. I have been shook since I watched the gas station videos you posted. I sent them to my friend, and she is also in disbelief. This friend and I have been telling a similar story for years, and I swear nobody believes us. You decide if it's connected. Late 2012, my very best friend came over to show me her new car. She bought a new Camry and was showing it off. I was going through a rough divorce, and she said she knew how sad I was, and she says, it came with a free full tank of gas. Let's go on a trip. I didn't have work or kids that weekend, so yeah, let's go. She had her little boy with her, same age as my youngest. We quickly packed overnight clothes, and she calls her fiance to let him know. He, of course, suggests we come up to where he is staying, only 3 hours away in Valdosta area, Georgia. We are from Daytona Beach area. We have the best car ride trip there ever. Make it to the hotel without incident, spend the night, have breakfast, and plan to leave in the afternoon. This is where it gets weird. On the way back home, using GPS, even though we knew where we were, on a highway headed toward Daytona, following signs. We have been this route many times. Road trips were not new to us, and we knew the way home without a doubt. It's important to know we could not have gotten lost. The highway, the actual highway, ended up in a roadblock sign, like it came out of nowhere. She pulls up to the sign, and we are now realizing that there were no other cars around us or anything for that matter. No houses, roads, cars, signs, nothing. We never turned off the highway. We look at GPS, it says we are on the right road, but of course our phones have no service. My friend is driving and turns back the other way on the highway and away from the dead end. We note how creepy it is, and we're making jokes about the wrong turn movies and how this is a setup. We were genuinely freaking out at the same time. We drove and kept driving and ended up at the same dead end without ever turning. She keeps turning around, and finally we come to this janky-looking gas station. Like it looked so out of place. 2 gas pumps from a different era that couldn't have been in service. She pulls up, and there was this young boy, maybe 8 or 10 years old, standing outside with overalls, half undone, no shirt, no shoes, smoking a cigarette, not saying a word. We were scared but had no choice but to go in and ask for directions. I would have let her keep driving, but she is braver than me. I stayed in the car with her son, and she went inside the store. She said when she walked in there, there was a very scary man matching the description in the other video, but she remembers his boots being unlaced because who in the woods has their boots unlaced? It didn't make sense to her. He was holding a mop and bucket. She said it looked like nobody had been in the store for 100 years. Filthy, disgusting, and old-type products, lights flickering. There was also a woman behind the counter. She says the lady only said, "You ain't from around here, are you?" She came running out to the car, put it in gear, and peeled out. We were back on the highway within minutes, and still to this day have no idea what happened to us. We also got pulled over on the highway right after this for speeding. We were thinking the cop was in on it because he gave her a notice to appear. She refused to go back and thinks her license may be suspended in Georgia. I never would have suspected time travel. We always assumed it was a trap to lure in unsuspecting victims. It was seriously like Wrong Turn meets Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Something very strange definitely happened to us that day. None of the clothing matched up. The place itself didn't make any sense. There were no cars or other people other than that at the gas station. The signs in the windows were decades old. We tell people and they say, "Oh yeah, you have to be careful in Georgia." We know for a fact we never left the highway. What happened? Where were we? GPS picked up right where we were once we were on the highway. Like none of the other driving ever even registered. I don't remember looking at the time or anything to see how long it was that we were in this loop. I'm wondering now if the arrival time ever changed or was it even a thing then? Seriously, the weirdest thing ever. Sincerely, 2 slightly more cautious women. P.S. I got confirmation from my friend that this is an accurate count to the best of our memory's abilities. Our memories have been through a lot since then and only know that these details are 100% true to the both of us. I have her permission to send this. Another anonymous one. Hi, I'm sorry for staying anonymous with this, but I work in higher education and can't afford to have it get out that I'm willing to share student stories on the internet. I only worked at schools that compete in the same athletic conference as Valdosta State and the community colleges in the area. At every single school, there's a little joke that goes on like, oh, don't get gas outside of Valdosta, no matter how cheap it is, whenever it comes time to play an away game in the area. I've been in higher education long enough to know that freshman terror tales run rampant around every campus, but the fact that there are so many stories that follow the same pattern is insane to me. My earliest story that I've heard comes from a retired coach who pulled the bus into a gas station outside of Valdosta in the late 1970s and swore that a couple ran into the gas station to buy Cokes and their car had a yellow "Support the Troops" ribbon magnet on the back that the registration tag said expired in 2006. Another coach told me that his wife had driven out to a game and gotten lost with the kids in the car. She was running low on gas, pulled into the station, and noticed the price was over 80 cents less than what she was expecting. So she ran in, paid, got a bag of chips for the kids to split when they woke up. About 5-10 minutes later, they caught back up with the team bus and went to open the chips, and they were greener than Redacted School's mascot. She then checked the label and realized they had to be at least 15 years old. One student, who was very into the paranormal at the time, was on her way back from spring break with her boyfriend. She said when they went to this gas station and it had all of these cool old school and vintage brands. She had been reading in the car and carried the book into the gas station. It was a reading for a history course, and the clerk commented on it saying, "I can't believe they've already written a book about that." The book was about the Tet Offensive. She then looked at the wall by the door, and it said that the year was 1970. She told her boyfriend, who was in the bathroom, that they had to get back on the road because it was getting late, and as they were walking out the door, she grabbed a handful of salt and egg shells from her purse and threw it behind her. When they turned around, the gas station had been boarded up and looked abandoned. Last year, after a football game, a group of brothers stopped at a boarded-up gas station to check their fan belt and tire pressure because the truck they borrowed from their dad, a VSU alum, was giving them issues. A, quote, old guy with gray hair came walking up behind them and looked it over for them. He made a few comments about how he'd worked on that truck before and could tell because he remembered some of the dents and key marks from a crazy ex-girlfriend. One of the brothers was like, okay, yeah, it was our dad's in college, and his girlfriend did beat it up when he got caught cheating on her with their mom. The guy chuckled and said, yeah, sure, whatever you say, kid, but it was just about 6 months ago that he, pointing at the brother who looks the most like their dad, stopped off here to get the same spark plug cleaned. That's a tongue twister. How did you get it this filthy in that short amount of time? The brothers all looked at each other and shook their heads when the youngest noticed that the gas station was no longer boarded up. The spark plug was cleaned and replaced, and the brothers took off back for their school in Mississippi. They decided to call their dad but couldn't get any service. They passed the gas station again, and the guy was standing outside fixing a flat on a car that looked very similar to what their mom had driven in college, with the student permit parking for the school she had gone to in the back glass. They drove for a few more miles and passed the station again and was boarded up. Then they got their cell service and called their parents. Their dad confirms that he did stop there a few times in college when he was heading to see their mom at school, and the mom confirmed that one time she had stopped there to get a flat fixed and saw the dad's truck drive by, but she was on the phone with him inside the gas station in the age before cell phones and knew it couldn't have been him. There are at least a dozen more stories I've heard over the years. They're all just too similar to sit well with me. Again, I'm sorry for giving you another anonymous submission. So that one's weird, right? And again, part of the reason I'm sharing these all on here is just because I need a second set of eyes. Like, I don't know what's real and what's fake and who's sent by hoaxers and just people trying to get attention, but all of these people want to be anonymous. So like, what do they have to gain? I'm not saying I think all of these are real, but I think there's a possibility. Another anonymous one from someone. Anonymous, just calling her C. Subject, Valdosta Sicko gas station experience. In 2001-ish, my best friend from high school graduated from the Navy Nuclear Power Program in Goose Creek, South Carolina. We're from Southern Florida, and I decided to drive up and celebrate her graduation. I had just graduated high school myself. She was a year older than me, and at the time, we had never gone on a road trip out of the state without a parent. I asked my friend Jay to come with me. Jay was a super close friend who was also gay, but not super outwardly gay. He wasn't closeted or anything. He was just very straight passing, if that makes sense. This is for context later in the story. We also decided to stop off in Savannah on our way back to Florida because we both loved the book and movie Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. From where we live in Florida, it takes about 7-8 hours to reach the state line, and we had MapQuest instructions printed out to follow to get to my friend's apartment in South Carolina because we didn't have smartphones back then, just good old Nokias. We were driving back and jamming out to the radio for a good 7 hours or so and missed the interchange from I-75 to I-10 in northern Florida and didn't realize it until we crossed the Florida-Georgia border. Somewhere near Valdosta, we got off at I-75 to find a gas station and see if we could find a map or get directions from someone to get back on track. I don't remember any signs or anything along the highway, but we had a habit of joking and calling wrong turns, taking the scenic route back then. We drove for what felt like forever through fields and red clay hills. There weren't any other cars on the road, and the radio went to static. After trying to tune into a different station but not finding anything, we turned it off. I called my mom to see if she could get directions from the computer for me, but there wasn't any cell reception. Eventually, an old school style gas station appeared on the right side of the road. It was pretty run down, but the lights were on. Jay had to pee really bad, so he jumped out of the car immediately and ran to find the bathroom. It was so quiet outside you could hear a pin drop. I went to put gas in the car, but the pumps didn't have any kind of credit card slot. I figured I'd see about directions or a map and prepay for gas at the same time. The inside was pretty run down and dusty and smelled like stale cooking grease. Even the packages of snacks were dusty. The guy at the counter was older, scraggly beard, wearing overalls like a trucker-style hat. They didn't have plastic soda bottles or cans like you'd usually find, but did have the glass Coke bottles. So I grabbed a couple of those and went up to the counter. I remember they didn't feel very cold. There weren't any maps, but I asked the guy how to get to I-9, and he just pointed further down the road instead of back to the interstate. At that point, Jay came in from the bathroom. I think they were outside in the back of the gas station. Just as I finished paying for some gas and 2 drinks, the guy at the counter looked Jay up and down and said, "Your kind should get out of here before the sun goes down," and then handed me change. We said thanks awkwardly and turned to head out the door. As we were going through the door, the man mumbled something else like, "If you see the big swinging tree, turn around, that's too far for you." He then pointed down the road again. At that time, we figured there weren't streetlights after dark or whatever, or maybe he was just being a creep who clocked Jay and didn't like gay people. Either way, we pumped the gas and then we left. We ignored his directions and went back the way we came because we knew we'd at least get back to I-75 that way. Again, it felt like we drove forever. Right about the time we should have been getting back to the interstate, we came to a really small town with a sort of roundabout around a big tree. The tree had an old frayed rope hanging from a branch high up in the tree. The place was totally dead. No sounds, no people, no other cars. It was super creepy, and we realized that the swinging tree had to be sort of hanging tree. We didn't even go all the way down about the roundabout. We pulled a 3-point turn and went back the way we came. We drove and drove for what seemed like forever. We passed the gas station again right as it was starting to get dark, and it looked close up. No lights, no people. It made it look even more run down than it seemed when we stopped there, almost like it was abandoned. A little while later, we went across this rickety wooden bridge that felt like it wouldn't even hold the weight of my little car. But we made it across, and then suddenly we saw another "Welcome to Georgia" sign and a sign for connecting with I-9. We followed the signs, and things were suddenly normal again. Other cars on the road, normal gas stations, fast food restaurants, and radio stations working again. We made it to South Carolina just fine, and just thought it was a weird road trip experience. I told my mom about it when I got home, and she just said that little sundown towns could still exist in the deep South. It was a really eerie experience. It's also important to note that when we got off near Valdosta, where we got off near Valdosta was not close to I-9 at all. That was almost across the state near the coast. We also, as I can figure, should have been driving east-west when we were on the road. The gas station was on, so we shouldn't have left Georgia again to get to a point where we were re-entering the state. We also never found our way back to I-75, driving in either direction from the gas station. Just suddenly we were back on track with the directions from MapQuest. I've never been able to find anything about where we got off on I-75 or the gas station or a sundown town with a swinging tree. It just really felt like we had driven through a tear in time and then back out a little while later. So there's that. Okay, I'm going to do one more tonight. I have so many of these, you guys, so many. So if you want more of these emails, just let me know. But this person said, "Hey, I would like my name to remain anonymous, please. I have a story about that gas station. My dad used to live in the Valdosta area back in the 80s. I sent your video to my dad and asked if he knew about that gas station, and he delivered with some crazy info. That gas station did exist back then, off the same exit. He couldn't remember what type of gas station it was. He said it could have been a Sitco, but wasn't sure. My dad also said that when he was a kid in the 80s, he lived only a 5-minute walk and would ride bikes to hang out there at that gas station and eat snacks with his friends almost every day. I asked what the worker looked like, and he described the same person you did with untamed white hair. The gas station was the place they would go to get gas, get food, and do everything you would need at a gas station for that very one. And yes, there was a body shop attached, but my dad never saw it in use. Eventually, my dad went off to college and didn't visit the gas station for 2 or so years, but one time when he came back, he wanted to stop and get a snack and looked for the same gas station but could not find it. Mind you, he was there every day, 5 minutes from his house for years. He would have just known the location. This probably would have been in like late 90s by this point. He said he drove all around the area and could not find it, so he just went back to the house where his dad and my grandpa still lived and still live to this day, which is on the same exit. I live in North Florida, so I take that highway exit on the same route they did every time I drive to visit my grandpa, which I do very often, at least once a month. I've never seen that gas station nor had an experience with it. but it is a straight road. There is no possible way that they could have driven in a circle and not realized it. It is straightforward and easy to find your way back to the highway. I have a memory of me and my dad driving around the area in the early 2000s. However, my dad slowed down and pointed to a patch of overgrown grass and said, "There used to be a gas station right there that me and my friends would hang out at. Shame they tore it down when I went to college." My dad shared the video with some of his old friends, and they all said that they hadn't seen the gas station in years. Most of them haven't been back to the area in a while, though, but they all still go from time to time and haven't seen it since. However, a few that stayed in the area after high school said they recall it being boarded up, but had not seen the building since around the late 90s and just assumed it got torn down. I'm aware this is mostly an info dump, but me, as well as my dad and his friends, are all shook. If you have any other questions, just let me know. The people from your video most definitely experienced a glitch, because otherwise it would be impossible. Thanks for your time. A lot of people have also been sending photos of gas stations in this area, maybe even boarded up or not open anymore or operational, to both Maria and I. She's going through all of her message requests and picture requests, but unfortunately we have not identified the actual gas station. I do think that there is a good chance that it's gone by now. That said, I am pretty confident that these city records of businesses from the 80s probably exist somewhere, even if they're not online. But if anyone thinks that anything in any of these emails is important, I think they're all really interesting. I'm not sure if there's anything really noteworthy in any of them, any information that can be added to the story to provide more context clues, but also maybe I'm missing something. So that's kind of why I'm sharing these here, in case anyone's like really into this and trying to solve this mystery. So again, I did this video just kind of as an experiment with all of these emails, but also let me know if you want more of them, because there are so many, you guys, like so many. If I get any groundbreaking updates, you will be the first to know.